Georgia regulators froze Georgia Power's rates for 3 years. Frozen. So why is your bill still expected to go up in 2026? The answer is a trick hiding in plain sight on your electric bill, and once you see it, you'll never read the word freeze the same way again. Here's what actually happened. In July of 2025, the Georgia Public Service Commission approved a deal to freeze Georgia Power's base rates for 3 years. No increases to the base rate through the freeze period. On the surface, that sounds like real relief, especially since it follows 6 rate increases in just 3 years. Customers were exhausted, it was an election year, and a freeze made for a great headline. But here's the catch. Your electric bill is not one single rate. It's a stack of separate charges, and the freeze only touches one of them. The base rate is the part that covers the utility's day-to-day operations and its profit. That's now locked. But sitting right next to it are other charges that were never frozen at all, and those are the ones about to move. The biggest one is fuel. Just like every utility, Georgia Power passes the cost of the fuel it burns, coal and natural gas, straight through to you, with no profit, through a fuel cost adjustment. That fuel charge is scheduled to be reviewed in 2026. If fuel costs have risen, that review can push your bill up, and the rate freeze does nothing to stop it. Now there's a silver lining here. Company officials have noted that lower fuel prices could actually offset other increases, so fuel could break either way. The point is, it's not frozen, it's live. The second charge is storms. In 2024, Hurricane Helene tore through Georgia, and Georgia Power spent heavily restoring power. The freeze deal explicitly excludes those storm recovery costs. The company is expected to come back and ask to recover them from customers, and that request is separate from the base rate. So even with rates frozen, a storm recovery charge can land on your bill as its own line item. Put those together, and you get the trick. The headline says, frozen. The base rate is genuinely locked. But fuel adjustments and storm recovery, 2 of the fastest moving pieces of your bill, sail right past the freeze. That's why the freeze can be technically true, and your bill can still climb at the same time. There's also a bigger cost sitting in the background of every Georgia Power bill, and it helps explain why customers were so worn down before the freeze even happened. Georgia Power spent years building 2 new nuclear reactors at Plant Vogtle. The project came in years late and billions of dollars over budget, and a chunk of that cost was ultimately loaded onto customer bills. That's a big reason Georgia saw 6 rate increases in just 3 years. So when a freeze arrives after that run, it's landing on a bill that already climbed a long way up. Freezing the base rate now doesn't undo the increases that got customers here. It just holds the current elevated number in place, while the fuel and storm charges keep moving around it. Critics saw this coming. When the Public Service Commission approved the deal, it bypassed the usual months-long review process that normally lets consumer advocates dig into the utility's spending. One commissioner, Bubba McDonald, objected that the profit cap was too generous, though he voted for the deal anyway. Environmental advocates argued the rushed process prevented real scrutiny of Georgia Power's spending, especially its heavy investment tied to data centers moving into the state. In other words, the freeze may have frozen the number everyone was watching while leaving the numbers they weren't watching wide open. This is the single most useful thing to understand about any electric bill, so let me say it plainly. When a politician or a utility announces a rate freeze, ask one question: which rate? Because base rate frozen is not the same as your bill won't go up. Fuel clauses, storm riders, and special surcharges usually live outside the freeze. They're the escape hatch, and utilities know exactly where the escape hatch is. So let me give you a quick anatomy of your bill, because it's the same almost everywhere. There's the base rate, the utility's operating costs, and its guaranteed profit, and that's the part a freeze usually locks. There's the fuel charge, a pass-through for the coal and gas burned to make your power, no profit, moving up and down with commodity markets. And there are riders and surcharges, special line items for specific things. Storm recovery, a big power plant, a clean energy program. When you hear a number in the news, it almost always refers to just one of those buckets. The freeze in Georgia locked the first one. The second and third are still live. If you pull out your own Georgia Power bill and look, you can literally see them listed separately, and you can watch which ones move over the next year. None of this means Georgia Power is doing anything illegal. Passing through fuel and storm costs is normal, and it's how utilities work everywhere. The issue is the gap between what the word freeze promises and what it actually covers. A customer who hears frozen and expects a flat bill is going to be surprised. A customer who knows to look at the fuel line and watch for a storm charge won't be. So here's the summary. Georgia Power's base rates are frozen for 3 years, which is real. But fuel costs get reviewed in 2026, storm recovery from Hurricane Helene is still coming, and both bypass the freeze entirely. This all follows 6 increases in 3 years, so the starting point was already high. The things to watch are the 2026 fuel review and the storm cost filing. Those, not the base rate, are where your 2026 bill actually gets decided. We'll be watching both. And if a freeze ever shows up in your state, you'll now know exactly which line to check first. If your electric bill keeps rising, this channel breaks down a different utility every week. Subscribe and watch the next one right here.